Imagine living in a world where sending a simple letter across your country meant walking for 3 agonizing months. This was the terrifying reality of the ancient world in 522 BCE. If a rebellion sparked on the distant borders of your empire, it would take an entire season for the news to crawl to your palace, and another season for your army to march. Your crown would be lost before you even knew you were under attack. But one ruler decided to wage war against the physical limits of time and space. King Darius the Great did not just conquer lands, he conquered distance itself. By standardizing and building a colossal network of paved paths, stone bridges, and fortified stations, he engineered the first true information superhighway in human history, the Persian Royal Road. Spanning over 2,500 kilometers across rugged mountain peaks and unforgiving deserts, this monumental corridor allowed royal messengers to complete a grueling 3-month journey in as little as 7 days. This is the story of how a brilliant ancient empire built a communication system, so fast, so secure, and so incredibly disciplined that it laid the foundational principles for global logistics and connected the ancient world forever. The Royal Road, the information superhighway of the Persian Empire, Act 1. The tyranny of distance and the birth of the King's Highway, the imperial horizon. In the 6th and 5th centuries BCE, the Achaemenid Persian Empire stood as an unprecedented colossus, stretching across 3 continents. To rule an empire of this magnitude was to wage a constant war against the physical limitations of distance. In an era when the speed of political decision-making was bound to the maximum velocity of a galloping horse, the threat of provincial isolation, administrative decay, and sudden rebellion was a perpetual hazard for the central crown. The critical vulnerability of this geography became clear in the year 522 BCE. Following the mysterious death of King Cambyses II, a crisis of legitimacy shook the empire. A usurper claiming to be Bardia, brother of Cambyses, seized the throne. Darius I, a lance-bearer in the royal guard and a distant relative of the royal family, launched a daring conspiracy with 6 other Persian nobles, slaying the pretender at the palace of Sikayovatish. Darius justified his action in the famous Behistun inscription, carved into a sheer cliff face in western Iran, claiming divine favor from the supreme deity Ahura Mazda. Yet, his legitimacy was tested immediately by 19 rebellions that erupted simultaneously across the empire, from Babylon to Bactria, and from Media to Egypt. As the dust settled on these conflicts, Darius realized a fundamental truth. Military might alone could not hold this vast territory together. The empire required a permanent, physical infrastructure of connectivity. This realization gave birth to the Persian Royal Road, a monumental highway system designed to project royal authority, secure imperial administration, and forever conquer the tyranny of distance. The pre-Achaemenid foundations. While history credits Darius the Great with the creation of the Royal Road, the Achaemenids did not construct this vast infrastructure entirely from nothing. Archaeological evidence indicates that substantial portions of the highway network predated the Persian dynasty. In the westernmost sections of the route, traversing Anatolia and Upper Mesopotamia, the Persians integrated and improved roadbeds originally laid down by the Assyrian kings. Cuneiform records from the 7th century BCE reveal that the Assyrians maintained a network of communication paths known as the King's Road, or Hulshari. These paths supported local way stations and supply lines to facilitate rapid troop movements and the flow of tribute from conquered regions. Similarly, the Medes and Elamites had long navigated trade routes through the rugged Zagros Mountains, bridging eastern Iran with the Mesopotamian lowlands. However, these pre-existing routes were narrow, sporadically maintained, and oriented entirely toward regional administrative needs rather than continental integration. Under the first Achaemenid rulers, Cyrus the Great and Cambyses II, these regional paths began to be used for imperial communication. But it was Darius I who undertook the monumental task of standardizing, expanding, and bridging these disconnected trails into a unified, cohesive imperial highway. By establishing uniform distances, Constructing permanent bridges and erecting fortified posting stations, the Persians transformed a series of localized paths into a single, highly efficient administrative machine. Act 2. The Great Survey, mapping the 111 stages of Herodotus. The anatomy of the route. To appreciate the scale of this ancient engineering marvel, one must trace its path as described by the Greek historian Herodotus in his histories. The primary trunk of the Royal Road spanned approximately 2,500 kilometers, or roughly 1,600 miles, connecting the western Lydian capital of Sardis to Susa, the administrative capital of the empire in Elam. Herodotus recorded that the route was measured in ancient parasangs, a Persian unit of distance. While modern interpretations of the parasang vary, Herodotus explicitly defined one parasang as equal to 30 Greek furlongs, or stadia, which translates to approximately 5.5 kilometers. According to this calculation, the total distance from Sardis to the royal palace at Susa amounted to 450 parasangs, equivalent to 13,500 furlongs. For an ordinary traveler moving on foot at a standard rate of 150 furlongs per day, completing this journey required exactly 90 days of continuous travel. Yet, the Royal Postal Service completed this same journey in a fraction of that time, demonstrating the extraordinary efficiency of the network. From Susa, a further extension of 552 kilometers linked the highway directly to Persepolis, the ceremonial heart of the empire, ensuring that the central administration remained intimately connected with the dynastic seat of the great kings. Satrapy by satrapy, the journey along the Royal Road proceeded through a series of distinct satrapies, each presenting its own geographic and logistical challenges. Departing from the Aegean-facing city of Sardis, the highway traversed the historical regions of Lydia and Phrygia. Across this western half of modern-day Turkey, the road ran for 94.5 parasangs, punctuated by 20 regularly spaced posting stations. The territory was safe, heavily inhabited, and meticulously guarded. At the eastern border of Phrygia, the road reached the Halys River, the modern Kızılırmak. Here, natural geography and imperial security converged. Travelers were forced to pass through a narrow mountain defile and a massive stone fortress, where royal guards inspected travel permits before allowing passage across the guarded stream. Once across the Halys, the road entered the rugged, wind-swept plateau of Cappadocia. This segment stretched for 104 parasangs, requiring 28 resting stages. As the road approached the southern border of Cappadocia, the topography became increasingly hostile, forcing the highway to navigate the steep, narrow passes of the Taurus Mountains. To enter Cilicia, travelers had to ride through two heavily fortified mountain defiles, guarded by permanent imperial garrisons. The journey through Cilicia itself was brief, spanning just 15.5 parasangs and containing 3 posting stations. Crossing the Fertile Crescent, leaving the Cilician lowlands, the road encountered the Euphrates River, which served as a massive natural boundary separating Cilicia from Armenia. This wide, navigable river had to be crossed by boat or temporary pontoon structures. Once across, the road entered the high, mountainous terrain of Armenia. This segment of 56.5 parasangs featured 15 resting stages and was guarded by a major frontier fortress to secure the northern borders of the empire. From Armenia, the road descended into the land of Matiane, a vast and culturally diverse territory. This was the longest single segment of the journey, spanning 137 parasangs and containing 34 posting stages. Throughout Matiane, the highway crossed the Tigris and its major tributaries, including the Greater and Lesser Zab and the Gindis. These wide, fast-flowing rivers presented significant engineering challenges, requiring travelers to cross by boat under the supervision of imperial ferrymen. After traversing Matiane, the road entered the Scythian land, running for 42.5 parasangs across 11 stages. The landscape here flattened into the fertile alluvial plains of Khuzestan. The final leg of the highway followed the course of the Chospis River, culminating at the gates of Susa, where the magnificent winter palace of the great king dominated the horizon. Act the Third. Archaeological realities. Below the pavement. The fragmented highway. For centuries, the popular understanding of the Royal Road was conditioned by the account of Herodotus, who described it as a single linear highway running from Sardis to Suda. However, modern historical geography and archaeological excavations have revealed that Herodotus provided only a partial perspective of a much larger reality. As an Ionian Greek living in the West, Herodotus viewed the Persian Empire from its Aegean periphery, focusing on the road that directly connected his world to the Persian court. In truth, the Royal Road was not a single, isolated highway, but rather the primary trunk of a massive, multi-branched communication and trade network. This network, mapped in detail by modern scholars, linked all 20 of the empire's satrapies. Key branches extended south into Egypt and the Levant, while others ran northeast across the central Iranian plateau, following the Great Khorasan Road through the Alborz Mountains into Hyrcania, Parthia, and Bactria. These eastern segments, which Herodotus did not document, were coincident with the ancient silk and lapis lazuli routes that had connected Central Asia to Mesopotamia for thousands of years. By standardizing these diverse paths, the Achaemenid kings created a continental network that served as the direct precursor to the historic Silk Road. Pavements, cobbles, and earth archaeological surveys along the route of the Royal Road revealed that its physical infrastructure was highly adaptive, varying significantly depending on local terrain, climate, and strategic importance. In flat, arid regions where the soil remained naturally firm, the Persians did not pave the road. Instead, they cleared and graded the terrain, creating wide, hard-packed earth trackways that were regularly maintained to prevent the accumulation of dust and seasonal debris. However, in areas prone to heavy rain, mountainous erosion, or marshy conditions, the Achaemenid engineers employed advanced paving techniques. At an archaeological site near Gordium in Phrygia, researchers uncovered a beautifully preserved stretch of the roadbed. This section featured a hard-packed graveled surface measuring 6¼ meters in width, held securely within a robust stone curbing. Further south, in the plains of Kazarun and Borazian in western Fars, surveys have identified paved sections constructed from large, unhewn foundation stones, covered by a middle layer of smaller cobbles and river gravel. This multi-layered design allowed rainwater to drain away from the surface, preventing the road from dissolving into impassable mud during seasonal winter rains. The standard width of these paved corridors was between 5 and 7 meters, a dimension specifically chosen to allow two-way wheeled cart traffic and to permit military units to march in columns with their baggage trains without causing bottlenecking. Overcoming natural barriers. To maintain a continuous flow of communication and military mobilization, the builders of the Royal Road had to overcome some of the most formidable natural barriers in the Near East. In steep, mountainous terrain where building a standard road was impossible, Achaemenid engineers cut narrow ledges directly into the vertical rock faces, or constructed massive stone causeways over deep ravines. The management of river crossings was equally sophisticated. While major wide-flowing rivers like the Euphrates and Tigris relied on imperial ferry services and pontoon bridges, smaller, fast-flowing streams were crossed by permanent stone bridges. In 1961, an archaeological expedition traced a stretch of the Royal Road from Gordium to Sardis, successfully identifying several ancient river crossings by locating the massive cut-stone bridge abutments still anchored in the riverbanks. In arid regions, particularly across the southern Iranian plateau, the road was supported by an array of water reservoirs, cisterns, and caravanserais. These cisterns, fed by underground aqueducts known as qanats, ensured that official travelers and their mounts had access to clean drinking water in the harshest desert climates, representing a level of state-sponsored engineering. Act 4. The Mechanics of the Mail, Chapar Khaneh, and Pirradazis. The relay system. The true genius of the Royal Road lay not just in its physical roadbed, but in the highly sophisticated logistical system that operated upon it. This postal system, known as the Chapar, or Chapar Khaneh, was the first state-sponsored relay network of its scale in human history. Developed under Cyrus the Great and brought to its administrative peak under Darius the Phirky, the system featured a network of over 100 posting stations positioned at regular intervals along the major highways of the empire. These stations were spaced approximately 20 to 25 kilometers apart, a distance equivalent to about 4 or 5 ancient parasangs, or a single day's journey for an ordinary traveler. However, for a mounted courier, this distance represented the optimal range that a healthy horse could gallop at full speed before breaking down from exhaustion. The posting stations, known as Chapar Khaneh or courier houses, were designed as fortified logistical nodes. They were constantly staffed by a postmaster, guards, and professional grooms, and were stocked with fresh horses, fodder, water, and basic sleeping quarters for the messengers. When a courier arrived at a station, they did not rest. Instead, they immediately handed over their dispatch to a rested rider on a fresh horse, who would gallop to the next station. This relay system operated continuously, 24 hours a day, ensuring that official intelligence could travel across the empire with unprecedented speed. The fortresses of the mail. Because the Chapar Khaneh network was responsible for transporting highly sensitive government correspondence, intelligence, and tax records, the stations were built with security as a primary concern. The structural legacy of these stations is preserved in rare surviving examples, such as the Maybod Chapar Khaneh in central Iran. Although the surviving structure at Maybod was rebuilt during the later Qajar era, it was constructed directly upon ancient foundations next to a historic caravanserai, preserving the layout of its Achaemenid predecessors. The Maybod Chapar Khaneh was designed as a fortified castle. It featured thick, high mud brick walls, defensive battlements, and a single heavily guarded entrance to prevent unauthorized access. Inside, the complex was divided into specific functional chambers. The outer perimeter contained secure stables designed to shelter and protect the valuable post horses from thieves and predators. The interior featured living quarters for the station master, rooms for the postmen and couriers, and a dedicated guardhouse for the garrison. At the center of the complex stood a secure elevated tower or depository where official documents and letters were locked away. These fortified courier houses were essential for maintaining the integrity of the postal system, ensuring that even in remote, uninhabited border regions, the king's mail remained safe from banditry and foreign espionage. The swift messengers. The messengers who powered this system were known in the Achaemenid administrative records as the pirradazis. These professional couriers were selected from the most loyal subjects of the empire, often including dedicated royal dependents or members of the noble elite who were trained in horsemanship from early childhood. To endure the physical strain of riding relentlessly from dawn until dusk, across mountain passes and desert plains, the pirradazis required extraordinary physical endurance. The messages they carried were written in the imperial administrative language, Imperial Aramaic, using ink on prepared animal skins or parchment. These documents were folded, tied, and sealed with clay bullae bearing the official cylinder seals of the satraps or the great king. Under normal conditions, a dispatch sent from Susa would reach Sardis, a distance of 2,500 kilometers, in just 7 to 9 days. An ordinary foot traveler required 90 days to cover this same distance, meaning the pirradazis operated at speeds up to 10 times faster than normal travel. During state emergencies, such as a provincial rebellion or a military invasion, the relay could be accelerated to cover up to 500 kilometers in a single day, allowing the Persian court to respond to crises with a speed that astonished the contemporary world. Act 5. Secrets of the Clay. The Persepolis Fortification Archive. The administrative discovery. For over 2,000 years, our understanding of the Royal Road was limited to the generalized, sometimes inaccurate accounts of Greek historians. However, in 1933, a discovery made during the excavation of the ruins of Persepolis transformed our understanding of Achaemenid history. While clearing a path through the northeastern fortification wall to remove excavation debris, archaeologists directed by Ernst Herzfeld discovered 2 small chambers packed with thousands of clay tablets. This collection, known as the Persepolis Fortification Archive, consists of an estimated 20 to 25,000 tablets and fragments, representing approximately 15 to 18,000 original administrative documents. Dating from 509 to 493 BCE, during the middle of the reign of Darius the Great, These texts were written primarily in the Elamite language, the ancient administrative tongue of southwestern Iran. Unlike royal inscriptions designed for propaganda, these tablets were daily administrative memos, recording the intake, storage, and distribution of food commodities by the satrapal bureaucracy of Fars. Crucially, the archive includes thousands of travel texts, which provide an intimate day-to-day record of the actual operations along the Royal Road system. The passports of antiquity. The travel texts in the Persepolis archive reveal that the Royal Road was a highly regulated, state-controlled corridor. Ordinary travelers could not simply walk down the highway and demand service at the posting stations. To travel along the road and receive rations, official parties were required to carry a sealed travel permit, known in Elamite as a halmi or mayatuka. These permits functioned as the passports of the ancient world. They were issued exclusively by the great king or by high-ranking satrapal officials, and were stamped with the official's unique personal or office seal. The seal impressions on the tablets were applied according to strict protocols, serving as secure, unforgeable verifications of authority. When a travel party arrived at a way station, they presented their halmi to the local supplier. The supplier verified the seal impression and issued the prescribed rations of flour, barley, wine, beer, or meat. The supplier then drafted a memorandum recording the transaction, which was stamped by both the supplier and the travel guide. These records were eventually collected and returned to the central accounting offices in Persepolis, ensuring a complete, audited record of all state expenditures along the road network. Rations of the elite and the humble. The Persepolis Fortification tablets provide a detailed view of the social hierarchy of the Achaemenid Empire through the prism of travel rations. At the apex of this system was Pharnaces or Parnaka, the uncle of Darius I and the chief administrator of the Persepolis economy. Pharnaces traveled with a massive entourage, and his personal daily rations were extraordinary. Administrative records reveal that he received a daily allowance of 2 whole sheep, 90 quarts of wine, and 180 quarts of flour. This surplus was not consumed by Pharnaces alone. It was used to feed his large personal staff, including his 300 boys, or puhu, a term referring to adult administrative assistants or servile dependents, who each received a standard ration of 1 quart of flour per day. In contrast, Pharnaces' right-hand man and deputy, Zishawish, received less than half of this amount, consisting of 1.5 sheep, 30 quarts of wine, and 60 quarts of flour daily. Below these high-ranking elites were the ordinary travelers, classified either as kurtash, state-dependent workers, or tashshup, military personnel. The tashshup, often referred to in Aramaic tablets as hayal, traveled in large units of hundreds or thousands. They were commanded by high-status officials and accompanied by their own servants, receiving standardized military rations on the move. These detailed records demonstrate that the Royal Road was a highly organized system, designed to sustain both the elite bureaucracy and the military forces of the empire. Tracing the travelers. To appreciate the practical operation of this bureaucratic network, one can look to a specific tablet cataloged as PF 1404. Written in the 27th year of the reign of Darius the Great, this cuneiform text records a single transaction at a way station named Hidali, located along the road between Susa and Persepolis. The tablet records that a traveler named Dauma, carrying a sealed travel permit issued by Artaphernes, the brother of King Darius and the satrap of Sardis, arrived at Hidali. Under the authority of this document, Dauma received travel rations for his party, which consisted of 23 men and 12 boys. The historical implications of this single tablet are profound. It proves that a travel permit issued by a satrap on the Aegean coast of Turkey, thousands of kilometers to the west, was recognized and honored by a minor supply official at a way station in the Iranian heartland. This seamless administrative integration demonstrates the extraordinary efficiency of the Achaemenid state. It shows that the Royal Road was not merely a physical path, but a highly disciplined bureaucratic corridor where imperial authority was consistently asserted, monitored, and recorded across vast distances. Act 6. Moving a mobile capital. The logistics of the peripatetic court. The court in motion. While the royal road was optimized for rapid courier communication and military mobilization, it was also required to support a massive seasonal migration. The great kings of Persia did not rule from a single static capital. Instead, they practiced a peripatetic form of governance, moving seasonally between their major administrative capitals of Susa, Persepolis, Babylon, and Ecbatana. This seasonal migration was a core mechanism of Achaemenid statecraft, allowing the monarch to project his physical presence across the empire and engage directly with local satraps and foreign diplomats. However, relocating the imperial court was a massive logistical challenge. The royal convoy did not consist merely of the king and his immediate family. It was a mobile city, numbering up to 20,000 individuals, including court officials, scribes, eunuchs, concubines, royal guards, and diplomatic delegations. Accompanying this human mass was an immense baggage train consisting of thousands of pack animals, horses, camels, and heavy-wheeled baggage wagons carrying the royal treasury, furniture, and the elaborate tents of the royal pavilion. To move this peripatetic court across the diverse topography of Iran and Mesopotamia required a specialized road infrastructure designed specifically for royal-scale logistics. Predictive modeling and the Susa-Persepolis corridor. To understand how the Persians navigated this difficult terrain, modern researchers have utilized Geographic Information Systems, or GIS, to model the route between Susa and Persepolis. Led by the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions-funded Persian Trail project, archaeologists have applied least-cost corridor modeling to identify the most viable travel corridors across this rugged landscape. The results of this spatial predictive analysis revealed that the royal road was designed to meet specific logistical constraints distinct from ordinary pedestrian paths. For a pedestrian or pack mule, the shortest and most cost-effective route between 2 points often involves steep climbs and narrow passes. However, for a royal convoy of 20,000 individuals, accompanied by heavy-wheeled carriages or harmamaxai, such routes were impossible. Steep slopes introduced severe mechanical strain that wheeled vehicles could not manage. Therefore, the GIS model demonstrates that the builders of the royal road deliberately chose longer, indirect routes that maintained gentle gradients. Furthermore, the road had to be wide. A single-file column of 20,000 people would stretch up to 15 kilometers in length, which would extend beyond 40 kilometers when including pack animals and wagons. With way stations typically spaced 15 to 20 kilometers apart, a single-file convoy would stretch across multiple stations simultaneously, creating a logistical bottleneck. By constructing the royal road with a width of 5 to 7 meters, the Persians allowed the court to move in multiple parallel columns, compressing the length of the convoy and ensuring efficient logistical coordination. The royal way stations. To support the seasonal movement of the peripatetic court, the infrastructure of the royal road featured a distinction between modest courier stations, known as hypaneas, and grand royal stations, known as stathmoi basilikoi. While the courier stations were simple relay posts designed for changing horses, the royal stations operated as temporary imperial capitals during court relocations. These sites were situated in spacious, flat, well-watered terrains, capable of accommodating the massive royal encampment and providing direct access to essential food and water sources. The Persepolis Fortification Archive supports this model, documenting that royal estates, or ulhai, and imperial paradises, or partatash, were strategically positioned along the road network. These estates served as agricultural production centers where supplies were systematically stockpiled and delivered before the king during his seasonal journeys. Archaeological excavations at Kale Yakali in the Mamasani area of southwestern Iran offer a compelling example of such a royal station. Located in an open, fertile plain shaped by the Phalian River, the site features elite columned architecture, storage facilities, and high-status administrative artifacts. This strategic integration of palace architecture, agricultural production, and road infrastructure allowed the Achaemenid kings to move their court across the empire with the same level of security and comfort found in their permanent capitals. Act 7. The strategic paradox, conquest, and legacy. The road as a weapon. The primary purpose of the Royal Road was always the preservation of imperial control. By ensuring a state monopoly on rapid communication, the road network functioned as a powerful administrative tool. If a provincial governor or satrap attempted to rebel, the news reached the central court in Susa or Persepolis within days. Long before the rebel satrap could organize an army, secure local alliances, or fortify their cities, the great king could dispatch his imperial garrisons along the paved highways to suppress the rebellion. This rapid military mobilization capability was demonstrated repeatedly during the reigns of Darius I Xerxes and Artaxerxes I, allowing the central government to maintain a high degree of political stability across a diverse territory. By linking key administrative hubs like Susa, Babylon, Sardis, and Memphis, the road network allowed the central court to keep a close watch on regional governors, reducing their political independence and securing the continuous flow of tribute and taxes to the imperial treasury. The invasion route of Alexander. However, the very infrastructure that secured the Achaemenid Empire also contained a profound strategic paradox. A highway system designed to allow the rapid mobilization of defensive forces can also be used by a fast-moving foreign invader. This vulnerability was exploited by the Macedonian king Alexander the Great during his invasion of the Persian Empire in the 4th century BCE. When Alexander crossed the Hellespont into Asia Minor, he did not need to survey new routes through the rugged mountains of Anatolia or the deserts of Syria. The Achaemenid kings had already solved these geographic and engineering challenges. Alexander and his highly mobile army simply seized the Royal Road, utilizing its graded surfaces, fortified bridges, and established posting stations to accelerate their advance. The royal stations and storage depots along the highway, which had been systematically stocked with grain, fodder, and livestock to support the peripatetic court, were captured and used to feed the invading Macedonian forces. The strategic checkpoints and mountain passes designed to repel foreign threats were bypassed or turned against the defending Persians. By utilizing the Royal Road network, Alexander was able to move his army with a speed and efficiency that caught the Persian defenders off guard, culminating in the swift capture and destruction of Susa and Persepolis. The highway system, constructed to preserve the Achaemenid dynasty, ultimately facilitated its rapid and total collapse. The Sassanid revival and the Byzantine Treaty. Following the collapse of the Achaemenid dynasty, the legacy of the Royal Road survived through successive empires. The Seleucids and Parthians continued to maintain and utilize the network to govern their territories, integrating its eastern branches into the burgeoning trade routes of the Silk Road. The highway system underwent a significant revival under the Sassanid Empire, which ruled Persia from the 3rd to the 7th century CE. The Sassanids systematically organized their way stations at intervals measured in parasangs, expanding the network further into Central Asia to secure their frontiers and facilitate trade. This postal and logistical network was formalized in a landmark treaty signed in 561 CE between the Sassanid Emperor Khosrau of Athene and the Byzantine Emperor Justinian I. The treaty guaranteed safe passage for official couriers across the contested frontier and formalized the spacing of way stations at intervals of approximately 12 kilometers, utilizing mules and horses to expedite intelligence, official correspondence, and commercial exchanges. This diplomatic agreement demonstrated that even after 1,000 years, the core principles of the Achaemenid postal system remained essential for the survival and security of the dominant empires of late antiquity. The ancestry of global logistics. The Persian Royal Road was far more than an ancient highway. It was the structural ancestor of global connectivity. The administrative and physical innovations introduced by Cyrus and Darius I laid the foundations for the communication networks of the Roman Empire, direct predecessors to modern postal and logistics systems. When the Roman Emperor Augustus established the Cursus Publicus, the state-sponsored courier system of Rome, he modeled its infrastructure directly on the Persian Chapar system, adopting the same relay structure and fortified way stations. Furthermore, the Achaemenid innovations of standardized languages, consistently formatted letters written on parchment, and systematic security protocols are preserved in the operational frameworks of modern international diplomacy and global logistics. Today, tourists and travelers still walk along the ancient routes of Anatolia and Iran, using the same infrastructure that supported the peripatetic courts of the great kings. The dusty, stone-lined paths of the Royal Road remain a testament to the power of connection, demonstrating that the human effort to overcome the barriers of geography, distance, and time is as ancient as civilization itself. Neither snow nor rain nor heat nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. If you like forgotten history topics, click that subscribe button and join us on a path of discovery. Cheers!